Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for March 21st, 2019. We've all completed our brackets for the men's basketball tournament and men's gymnastics tournament. Before we get started this evening, we would like to just extend a thank you to all of the participants in Monday night's open hearing. We had lively discussion with Warren, with all of the presenters for the articles from Article 1 and Article 2 to the town operating budget, to the middle school presenters with the plastic bag initiative, and who were very impressive, I might add. So to Mona DeShillo, to Diana, who handled all of the audiovisual, to Rick for your help, and specifically Carl for everything that you did to put it all together. Thank you very, very much. It was a very well-run evening. We had assumed 2 hours from start to finish. We finished about 20 minutes ahead of schedule. So we hope that town meeting will run exactly the same way. And in addition to that, we have to extend a big congratulations to the boys basketball team from Dover-Sherburne High School, who captured the Division 4 state championship.
It was
Saturday.
Division 3.
3?
Mm-hmm.
Division 3.
Maybe both.
I thought we were
I thought
Division 3.
Division 3 and they had to play down. All right, we're going to get back to you, but Coach Grady, congratulations. Can we just say it's Division 1 and bring it up?
You can just say the state championship in their division.
Their division.
Really informed on the
Yeah,
rankings.
exactly. Congratulations. Huge accomplishment, and a big shout out to the boys, the managers, to all of the participants on Saturday. We are, I was also very happy to participate today in the seniors local civics class with Brendan O'Hagan and the members of the government at the high school. Thank you for a great afternoon. It was really a pleasure to be with you. So that's the open citizens part. And
So what grade did you get?
Oh, what did I get? Oh, to be determined. We're gonna see how well. You're gonna see how well they respond. See what I get graded in. Is there anything from Camille? Would you have anything for open citizens? No.
You'll see, D3.
D3. Thank you, Mrs. Hunter.
I will put my phone away for this.
Amended on the fly.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you, technology. Our first item this evening is to approve the Technology Advisory Board discussion. Mr. Springen, is there anything you would like to add to this? Or Ms. Hunter, anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I like the TAB, the acronym. I like the TAB.
0 calories.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
We-
I thought this looked great.
So the suggested motion is we would accept a motion to approve the charge of the Technology Advisory Board and begin the process of recruiting members for the board.
So moved.
Seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So what's your outreach going to be? Just the website or?
No. It'll be similar to what we did for the Carroll Committee. So
Okay.
the series, it'll be on the website, obviously. And then we'll contact different people and ask them to also outreach for recommendations. And then we'll put together a list.
Okay,
Check it twice, do the interviews, drink a lot of coffee again,
okay.
and get that resolved.
Well, along that line, just with regard to the formation of the committee, we would really like to extend a special thank you to Carl Rubin, who heads the Technology Advisory Board in the town of Needham. Carl was extremely helpful, very generous with his time to give us the insight to what Needham has done. It's been an extensive project in Needham, and specifically to Jerry was instrumental in putting us together with the board in Needham and has helped us with the insight in terms of the scope and the nature of this project. So thank you very much to those two gentlemen. The next item for discussion this evening is to discuss the town election ballot questions. Any other, Mona, is there anything that you need to do other than just announce to people that you will be
There is
sending
no
the clerk?
question, or there is a question, that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Mona will send a letter to the town clerk informing Felicia whether there will be a question on the ballot, and if so, provide the wording and printing for the election ballot.
And typically, there's only a question if it's a debt, right?
A debt exclusion or an override, of which there's going to be neither, right? So we can inform the town clerk there will be no questions this year?
Yep.
On the ballot, right?
Yes. Next item, the agenda this evening is to discuss annual town meeting warrant articles. So, would you like to begin specifically? Can we go right to Article 4?
Yes.
Article 4 is the operating budget, whether to request additional funding to begin implementation of the likely technology improvement / staffing coming from the technology study. The board has discussed adding a business analyst project manager to the position based upon other positions within the town, and a budgeted salary of $65,000 is recommended. Mrs. Hunter, would you like to add anything to that?
So I think this position is broader than just IT, because I think there are other projects, every year there are projects in the town that I believe that this person can assist with, not only IT projects, is that correct?
Certainly if the person has the bandwidth, yeah, at the
Okay.
time, there would be other projects.
Okay.
Is the focus of this particular article and this particular discussion this evening just the amount of money we can?
Well, it's putting in a salary line item for this, it's an additional FTE.
Right.
And-
That's the most important
Right.
piece for tonight is however you're going to define the project that can
Right,
change as
okay,
you.
Okay,
My
Really
feeling is
define
I
it.
just wanted to be sure we are comfortable with that dollar amount, because if we want to increase it, it should be now.
Yes.
Okay, so my recollection of discussions around this particular position, it was sort of it was broader than IT. Recognizing that as we've been talking, again, going back to the summer when we were meeting on a pretty regular basis, there was a series of things that we thought someone with project management skills could help us address. And I thought a heavy dose of that would require IT skill sets. And so, again, so a broad project manager to provide the leadership, organizational skills, and experience at implementing various and sundry projects throughout for the town. I did a quick Google search on project managers, and the range, the salary range, and again, it's just the quick one, was 75 to 100,000. I would be, I mean, when Carl and I first talked about this, I was thinking of a relatively high-level individual reporting directly to the town administrator, kind of the equivalent of a department head. And so I think 75 to 100, is that the range for a department head as well, roughly?
Pretty close, yes.
So if we could pick a midpoint, if we pick 80 or 85, maybe that would be a better number than 60 or 65?
well, you can pick 80, there should be a little bit of excess potentially, because, we're getting a new town administrator, and we're not sure if we're gonna have
Yeah,
to
with the salaries
pay,
coming
right, on the upper ends or
Yeah.
not, so
So you're comfortable with 80,
I,
John?
I would be comfortable with 65 as well, but, 80's fine.
I would be comfortable with more than 65. I'd rather err on the side of asking for more and not spending it than having somebody who you really want, a really qualified person, and not
Yeah.
being able to afford that.
Right, yeah, that was sort of my bias as well.
Are you all right? Would you be all right with that?
Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable.
So then, could we change that number to 80,000? And would that, we don't have to do these one at a time, we can do these, we don't have to make a motion, or should we make a motion on each individual, or make a motion at the end?
So I still have a comment on our.
Oh, okay.
So the other thing that we have talked about is making sure that our professional services line item is robust enough, again, to support increased activity, certainly compared to the past. We're expecting to do increased number of projects that are going to require probably outside consultants. And we've talked about asking our current interim town administrator to perhaps provide mentoring services when we find a qualified candidate. And I just want to make sure that we have enough money for that. Now, assuming the warrant article 10 is passed at town meeting, we'll have sufficient money on
For projects.
for projects on the IT side. However, if we have internal projects and we need to do, other kind of projects, do we have enough money for things like retrofit, if we increase their usage, et cetera, et cetera? So the question I still have is, I think it's about 100,000 in professional services?
No, it's 25, we budget between 25 and 35 the last 3 years. So it's
25,000.
25,000.
So the question is, do we think that that's a big enough cushion for us in 2020?
It's hard because we don't know what we want. There's also professional services in other departments. I think my concern is the data processing department. I didn't bring my budget book, but I believe we added another 30,000 for professional services, only because the project we thought we were going to complete this year, I'm not sure is going to get completed. So we may need a little bit of extra funds over there. I would say ask for another 50, but I don't know if the warrant will give it to us because we can't specifically say what we want to use it for.
Well, in this, I'm sorry, John, if we had Carl as a consultant, would that go in this line item or a different line item?
It would go in professional services.
This one.
So,
So I'd say between 25 and 50, add to that line.
what I made notes on specifically of upcoming projects that are going to be affected that potentially could use an on-site insight or a professional services type of approach with this building, professional service building, with projects that we know are coming in the future. I would like to have an on-site insight type of a study before the capital is slated to be expended. So I think it lends itself to that type of an expense, whether it's a $10,000 expense or a $12,000 expense or a $15,000 expense per building, that would require
Well,
at least.
they're 3,800. That's what the report costs for across the street. They're
So-
not that
Yeah,
expensive.
so it is a bit of a, obviously,
That's
we don't know the
Right.
future, right? We can't project. I mean, again, it's, to go back to your earlier, it's better to err a little higher and get the things done that you want to do than come up short.
Exactly, if we had
and not
leftover
be
money.
Not be able to actually execute.
Gets returned. Right. So that's why I say ask, somewhere between 25 and 50. And you can always ask for a reserve fund transfer
Yes.
if our estimate is wrong, so.
Right, unless these things were foreseeable, and then you get a hard time.
If we don't
Right.
use it, we return
Right,
it.
so what do you want to go to 50?
I
Or do you
think,
want to add 50?
So we have 25. I would add 50, so make it 75,000.
yeah, I'd be comfortable with that, 75.
Our budget is gonna go on hold at town meeting, so we're
Sure.
gonna need to defend it,
That'll be exciting.
okay?
We're gonna defend. So that's Article
4.
4. So, is the total then 155,
No,
80 plus 75?
80 plus 50, because there's 25 already in there.
Increase it to 50.
No, increase it by 50. So 25's already in there, we're gonna ask for an additional 50. We'll bring it up to 75.
And then add 80
We're
for
gonna
the-
add 80, so we're asking for $130,000.
Okay. And okay, got it. Just double counting.
So do we have to, on Article 5, do we need to, it says revote, we have to, is that something?
Right.
So Article 4, can we move Article 4 to ask for 130,000?
Additional?
Yes, that's what we're looking for. It's actually because one's in a salary line item and the other's in the expense line item. It would be, you're looking to increase the salary line item by 80 and the expense line item for professional services by 50.
So I'll make a motion to increase the salary line item of the Board of Selectmen's budget by $80,000 for fiscal year 2020.
Seconded? All in favor? Aye.
And then I'll make a motion to increase professional services line item for the Board of Selectmen's budget for fiscal year 2020 by $50,000.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I'm sure that was exactly the right process.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Okay. Calculus moved to number 5?
Yes.
Article 5, capital budget. Rebuild the request for a protective service agency, HVAC, to reflect the change to a split AC heat pump system based upon discussions with the capital budget committee on Wednesday evening. So you covered this Wednesday. Would you like to add anything to it?
So Carl was adamant that Carl was going to present it tonight, so.
Oh, was he? You didn't tell me that. Oh, delegate up, huh?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But I could give you some background. So we've, in our discussions with Carl Warnick, we talked about, being sensitive to energy efficiencies, and heat pumps have become a lot more efficient, and Carl Warnick looked into it, and he talked to a couple of vendors, and we could actually replace, we were looking to replace the 3 of the condensers at the Protective Agency building, or 3 of the units, with like units, but if we replace them with heat pumps, with units with heat pumps, what could actually land up happening is we will not use any oil, because you could use the heat pump to cool and heat the building, which would be a significant benefit. We do know, we have talked to Eversource, and we qualify for $3,000 rebates on each of the units. It's a combined rebate, but it's $3,000. So what that does is bring the cost down to $15,000 from $18,000. We're also looking to determine whether or not we wanted to apply for a green community grant, but the issue we have is we couldn't get some of the data in time. Our consultants couldn't get it to them, and the grants are due tomorrow. So a member of the capital budget committee is trying to see if his engineers may be able to supply the information that's needed. But again, when it comes to the grant, you're not guaranteed of getting the grant, so we have to request the full amount of the appropriation. And to get these units, we need an additional $10,000. So the original estimate was 50, and we're asking for another 10. Did I get it right?
Yep, that's it.
So the motion is to revote the request for protective agency HVAC reflect the change in the split AC and heat pump system based upon the discussion of capital budget to
Right.
request an additional $10,000.
Second.
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 Thank you very much. Article 10, technology study, to vote the amount to be requested, $250,000, which has been suggested. We covered this in detail on Monday night. We really heard a lot from people. Was an excellent discussion, presentation. I thought was extremely well done, Mr. Springer. I don't know that there's anything more to add, but I would accept a motion to vote the $250,000 that we have suggested for the technology study.
So before we make a motion, I just think I've received quite a number of calls on the number, and the comments I got are what are you putting in an ERP system? Because this price is really high. So I think we really need to be able to specifically outline what we think we're going to use these funds for, because I expect to get that type of a question. You know, it just seems like a lot of money when you look at the systems in this building. And right, but the issue is, and this is a question I've gotten from 3 people, do you need anything more than to provide updated computers to people with licenses for Office 365, because that's what everybody uses in here, and have the capability to have cloud storage? And so I had 2 people ask me what was the need for an ERP system in the townhouse. So I just think we need to be, it needs to be clarified, because this is a lot of money, and so we need to be able to answer that question, I think.
Good feedback. Thank you. I still, thank you. And I still think that the proper thing to do this evening is for us to vote on that amount and to move that forward so we can continue the process.
Agreed. I just don't want the process to get derailed because we can't explain the amount.
So I would accept a motion to approve the $250,000 that has been suggested in our previous discussion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Article 11, OPEB stabilization fund, to vote the amount that has been requested of $1.6 million, which again covered in detail on Monday night. Mrs. Hunter made a 6-minute and 32-second presentation, keeping it under the 8-minute guideline.
No, it was 9 minutes and 50 seconds.
No, it was almost under the.
And I was giving a presentation on 4 articles, which allotted me 32 minutes based upon my calculations, so.
How long do you think it was going to take that?
This is a tough group.
This is a very tough group. However, I will say that the questions I thought were excellent, and the presentation obviously reflected the amount of time that we have put into this, which has been considerable, so.
Right,
there's-
and you know, and just the same with Article 10, they're follow-up items that, you know, that's why it's great to have these open hearings, because you don't think of everything, and I think there were some good follow-up items that we need to better explain, such as what exactly is the contractual obligation of OPEB, investment policies for the funds, but we can work on that.
I thought both members of the Dover School Committee did a very good job in explaining their portion. The Regional School Committee did a very good job explaining their portion. We've had the luxury of hearing these articles on numerous occasions. We've had the luxury of attending the combined hearing of Dover and Sherburne with the regional schools, so we know exactly where they are on these items. And as we have been mentioning for 10 months, OPEB and the funding of OPEB is something that's been on this board's agenda since May of last year. So it is really something that I'm happy to see on and has been very well received so far. I accept the motion to move 1.6 million as the amount into Article 11 for OPEB stabilization.
Second,
All in favor? All in favor? Aye.
do we need to specify that we're recommending moving this out of free cash into a stabilization fund?
But
Yes.
isn't that, I mean, that's the system.
I don't know, I'm asking the question.
Yes, I think that would be helpful if you did that
Okay.
as well.
Do you want to amend your motion?
Sure, to move the money out of free cash to the creation of a stabilization fund, which is Article 11 for OPEB, and the amount to be requested is 1.6 million as an amended motion.
So
Second.
she did the same thing for the 250 as well. Right?
For Article 10.
In all likelihood, that will have to come out of free cash as well,
Yeah.
yes. And it's just, it won't come out, it won't be part of Article 11. It will just be the vote for the technology study. The funding will be from free cash.
So
It just,
technically, that is Article 26.
No, it's
I'm sorry,
a
25.
separate, it's a special, when you, at town meeting, they always ask, what's the source
Of
of?
funds.
And in the write-up, it generally
Right.
says from, you know.
Right.
So wouldn't that be a source of funds in Article 26 when we're doing this, what is that?
well, I don't believe so, because you've talked about using Article 26 just for the purposes of
Purpose of
tax stabilization, yeah.
So can we should amend Article 10 to reflect the language of from free cash?
From free cash, yes.
So we would suggest amending the motion of Article 10 to reflect from free cash, a technology study vote to be requested $250,000.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Mona, sorry that we had
It's all
to
right.
put you through that for the minutes, but
It's okay?
You know who to blame, right?
Yes,
yeah,
of course.
in this case, we'll just blame me. I am very,
Actually, I think it was Carl who corrected us on that one.
It wasn't us.
No, it wasn't.
Articles 12, 13, and 14 and other stabilization funds, vote whether to continue to request these articles or dismiss. At this point, I think we're all in favor of dismissing the
Right.
articles as we have discussed in previous meetings. Anything that you would like to add?
No, I think that's right.
No.
The only thing I would like to say is we did put a lot of time, energy, effort, due diligence into these specific items. They became topics of conversation as listening to part of our free cash discussion and some of our constituents. The land conservation is and always has been one of the top two most important articles to the town of Dover. And we hear what our constituents are saying. As I think Mrs. Hunter pointed out very eloquently on Monday evening, we're not going to move an article forward until we are completely satisfied that we can defend the use of cash and the use of your, have an executed, a plan that we can execute. So while we are all in favor that it was really a good idea and a very good use of time, a lot of time on our parts to look into these, they're not dead. We're going to continue the process. We're going to continue everything in our power to make sure that we give the town of Dover the appropriate measures to be able to utilize our open space, our water resources, and the use of your cash to do it. So I would accept a vote to request that these articles be dismissed.
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Yeah, this is a deferral.
Yes. Very good
Well, we
word.
designed a framework and we can,
What's the point of
this,
the deferral?
right.
And just deferring this.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that it was a lot of time, energy, and effort, and these are not going to go away. We're going to revisit these in the future. Article 16, Carroll Community Center, extraordinary repairs, vote to request the additional $50,000 that has been suggested.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Article 26, free cash to reduce the tax rate. Discuss the amount to be recommended to the warrant committee. At the warrant committee last night, the free cash discussion group had come up with a suggested amount to keep the amount of free cash within specific percentages of our total operating budget. So from 10% on the low side to 17.5% on the high side. The discussion at warrant last night specifically centered around bringing the number, the percentage of the current free cash as a percentage of the operating budget from where it stands now at just over 24%, back down towards that stated goal of the free cash discussion group of the upper end of that limit. To do that, you would move a percentage of that money over a period of time back to reduce that free cash. In specific, the total amount would be reduced over a period of time, over a number of years. How much of that should go into Article 26? The warrant committee was discussing that at length last night when I left warrant. Would you like to add anything to that in terms of what we've talked about, either of you, in actual real dollars or percentages?
So I think at a minimum, it has to be whatever the estimate for circuit breaker reimbursement is.
Which is another.
Which is, I don't know what it is, it's
Well, I think
typically
that
approximately $1 million. And then I just want to make sure that everybody understands the position of warrant, which I believe is, we're not looking to fix this in year one. What we're looking to do is take a gradual approach to reducing free cash as a percentage of the operating budget over time, so that we can ensure that we've been thoughtful about the funding of liabilities and are comfortable with the limits that we've set within the framework for free cash. So I would say then, since the funding of OPEB is not, that's still included in what the free cash is, it's just moving it to a different bucket, you're probably looking at somewhere between $1 and $2 million to use for free cash.
Carl, did warrant report back to you today in terms of the discussion last night?
I mean, if you just do the math, that's probably what you need.
So we gave to warrant on a couple of different occasions that the average amount over the past 5 years of free cash increases over the previous year, on average, over the past 5 years, was about $2.5 million. So for that, as a percentage of the budget, $2 million, $2.5 million is essentially, if we utilize the items that we've delineated tonight, we add that to the 1.6 million of OPEB, the number for free cash to be returned should be somewhere between 1.1 million and 1.4 million, or 1.5 million. That's the total number, will be, the aggregate of those numbers will be in line with what we've been discussing since the beginning of the free cash conversation. Is it necessary for us to put a specific dollar in this amount tonight?
Because typically they make a recommendation to
That
us,
we,
that we either say yeah or no.
Well, so maybe there's two ways to answer the question. This is really much more of this is much more of a policy issue that it seems like it should come from the board, which also has implications for the following year.
right,
Because if you don't continue it in the following year,
we
it's
spoke
gonna,
last night.
it's gonna have the appearance of a tax increase. And
So what happened a year ago, 2 years ago, we put a lot of money, more money than we did last year into into the smoothing of the rate increases. So it really, in fact, this year, it seemed like an artificial rate increase because the amount that we put in wasn't as much as the year before. And what I just shared with Warren last night was the unintended consequences of a large amount this year, potentially a large amount next year, and then possibly nothing in the third year because of items that we know will be asked for money, potentially from free cash. If we did nothing in the third year, that year you see an artificial rate increase, I think is what
Yes.
you just mentioned.
Well, I think if you look back historically, we've always used about between 1 million and 1.5. You have the numbers to fund.
Close the gap.
To close the gap, which is basically what we're doing right now. And I mean, the justification when I was on warrant, the chair of warrant was, you should definitely spend what you expect to get back in circuit breaker.
Right.
So with 1.1 being
So I'm a
the
little
bottom of the
bit
range,
confused here as to, is this plug in the gap? Or is this an amount over and above plug in the gap? What are we talking about right
over
now?
and above.
But we don't, I can't make a decision on this because I don't know what the revenue side plus all the expenses are.
Right. Can we defer this particular item until our next meeting when Warren reports back? Because they have to have that number for the blue book by Friday or next Tuesday.
So this one, yes, you could defer. And to Ms. Hunter's question, we don't know how much of free cash we need to plug the gap yet because we don't know what capital, where they're going with all of their recommendations, so.
So we have
that's-
every recommendation with capital, with the exception of the HVAC units, and we're going to meet next week to vote that.
What's the current request from capital that you guys have approved?
So we approved the ambulance, which is roughly 300,000. The roof, which is 250, so that's 550. We approved the radios, which are 32,000, so 550.
So let's call that 6.
6.
Vehicles for
There weren't
highway?
any.
Not for highway?
Was
Oh,
one highway.
Highway, the truck, the pickup truck, so that was 60. I think it's around 560. I have the number at home, I can give it to you.
I have the numbers, so let me just go through the list, because
Okay.
I'm trying to, for the warrant committee, give them the whole picture. So the
Okay.
mower for cemetery commission,
Was not approved.
so that's a no. Radio, fire radio equipment is a
Approved.
yes. Ambulance is a yes. For building maintenance, the roof was a yes.
Yes,
The de-leading of the firing range?
yes,
Air conditioning was a yes.
right,
For highway, the pickup truck,
was a yes,
the fuel dispensing system?
yes.
And for recreation, the tractor?
No,
And they had a dump truck also.
they removed, they withdrew that.
So if you add them up, is it about 7 or 8 million?
I have it on my computer, which is in the
have
other
it,
room.
but
And
I can put it into our overall
stopped at
model.
642.
Yeah, that sounds about right, like
Uh,
660.
642, and I didn't have the amounts for the de-letting or the other things, so.
That's 7, let's go, you can, 7 is probably close,
Right.
closer with the truck and et cetera. So we have 7
The
there.
de-letting was 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know the radios were 32, because we almost missed those
So,
last night.
if it's over, back to your question, if it's over and above, then, and you're using 700,000, and you're staying within the guidelines, the minimum amount, the ballpark amount is gonna be between $1.1 million and on the high side, $1.3 million.
Well, the million you're gonna get back.
Right. Right, so just either you've got the rest of the line items.
This is gonna sound like the warrant committee. So we start at 9.7, we take out 1.6, right? We take out another 7.
But you don't really take out 1.6, because 1.6 just moved to a different account.
Yes.
She used the accounting phase, just want to say. She just used the
Well-
accounting phase, putting that money back in.
Right. But the amount, the range that you're talking about, 10 to 17.5, does that include stabilization accounts? Or is it just the cash reserve account?
It includes the stabilization accounts.
Right.
So you, and maybe stress, over a 2-year period.
Right.
So to Mrs. Hunter's point on Monday night, doing it all at once, and what we've talked about is not.
And making sure that people understand the impact of doing
Right.
this through time, that I'm not sure people do.
Right.
So, yeah, I think a sort of a phased approach is the right approach.
Because what Warrant showed was revenues equaled the total operating budget. But they showed it,
They did.
right, but I don't think that included Article 5.
Well, then,
Right.
but then, he was talking Article 4 on Monday. Article 5, so that's 700,000.
And
And the other things that we've.
you have 250, right?
Were the votes you just mentioned, were those capital votes
Yes.
or warrant committee?
Capital votes.
Capital.
But the Warrant Committee members on capital voted, all the votes were unanimous. So I would expect, but there's no guarantees that they would.
So maybe to get to your question about Article 26, if you defer that to your next meeting, I'll now rebuild the budget model based on what you've decided tonight on the other articles, based on what capital voted, and then I can give you the big picture on how much free cash is needed, if any, to plug the gap first, and then what's left after that.
Right.
So the 700 for capital, we'd look at it 300 for the 250 and the 50 for this.
That's $1 million bucks.
Million.
Right.
So that, the total of all the three, OPEB, full-on transfers to capital, and Article 26, if we are somewhere between $1 million and $1.3 or $4 million, you're well within the navigational beacons percentage-wise.
And so you'd look at cash, would look at cash reserves of somewhere, what, 7 million?
Yes. So the cash reserves would go from where you are now back to somewhere in, depending on what you settle in, and depending on what happens at town meeting, to from 9.7 million back to 7.6 million, which is exactly what we had discussed 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
Not exactly, but
close enough.
my terms, exactly. Mrs. Hunter, make sense? We don't have to,
No, because I feel like,
why you feel we're missing something.
well, what I feel as though we're doing is, you're not, the 1.6 million is just going to another bucket.
Right.
So it's still, it may not be in the cash reserves, but if we're saying that the target for cash reserve should include stabilization accounts, because that's what other towns are doing.
No, we're talking,
Right, that's what I thought we were doing, so that 10 to 15%, I thought we said included stabilization funds.
got it. We'll have to make sure that is clear and more. That part, I'm not.
Am I wrong?
Well, the only thing I'd add is, for this particular stabilization fund, the OPEB one, that's covering a liability.
Yeah.
So at some point, that's going to have $40 million in it. So you don't want to include
So
that
why
as
would
part
you
of your
include
Yeah, right.
reserve. It's offsetting a liability.
Okay,
should be
all right,
excluded.
That one you would
okay.
exclude.
That should
All
be
right.
excluded.
So just, all right, so that makes sense to me. So then the only stabilization of funds that it potentially makes sense to include are those funds that don't have a liability that you're funding. All right,
They become specifically directed savings accounts.
right, thank you.
How come
Okay,
when
so,
he said it, it made
because
no
no, it
sense?
made sense because it was a nuance there that made sense to me.
So, I believe we're
Back to where we
back
were.
to exactly
Right.
where we were.
No, so then I agree with what you said.
Take it and go.
Rick, can we get that and play that over on a loop? Mrs. Hunter says,
Well-
I agree with
Well, I'm a
what you
little
said."
slow, I just need to make sure that I understand this stuff.
Play
That's
that.
what a good financial person does.
God love you. Yes, thank you very much.
You know, I need to make sure we're talking about the same things.
Exactly right, Robin.
So, just to close the book on this, quite literally this page, we don't have to, I think we are absolutely on the same page in terms of where our expectations are, but I would like to make sure that warrant, we're actually talking about the same set of criteria, guidelines, so if they're not, we can at least be able to have that conversation and understand where they are and where we are.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yep, so I think it's an important nuance, because I think there are people on warrant that don't grasp, just like I didn't, that 1.6 million is funding a liability. So you have to say that that's off the table.
Okay. Noted. So we do not need another motion.
You do not.
And you're so good at it.
Sarcasm just becomes you.
I know.
Sorry.
But there are the special liquor licenses
There
to
are.
look forward to.
Thank you. Updates. The next item of business is for our updates and rail trail, Mrs. Hunter, anything to add that we haven't covered?
So we haven't heard back from the MBTA, and I did have a brief conversation with Friends of the Dover Greenway and said we should circle back to go over, they had said that they really wanted to go over the cost estimate, so I said, why don't we try and get a meeting on our calendar so that we can do that? So they're gonna give me some dates that may work for them.
Thank you. Carol, community?
Really, what's happening there is we have wrangled some invitations to present the Carol story that's upcoming in the next couple of weeks. One was at the event that I think Grant Stevens informed people about that happens at the Dover Church. And the other one, Adrian Hill invited us to a meeting at a soccer club where he has about 60 or so coaches.
Oh, that's great.
So we can't do a full-blown, presentation, but we can certainly raise awareness, which is the whole objective of the
Right.
next phase of the project. So that's pretty positive. And we're working on I call it a web link, where we'll have documents stored for people to access. The communication strategy is coming along And that should be finalized by the end of the month, maybe first week in April. And I believe our next meeting of the Carroll project team is I think it's next Wednesday. Sorry, it's next Thursday, because opposite this.
So I'm to also report to you from the Dover Sherburne High School seniors that I met with today, that they would love to see, it not necessarily in this order, they would love to see something that had Wi-Fi capability, that was compatible with a Starbucks. I'm not sure why, but this is just not in that order. And something that had extended hours. So a center that has Wi-Fi, coffee.
That shouldn't be that
and
hard.
extended hours. Not necessarily in those order, in that order.
So, yes, I think that all those things make sense, and those things are reasonably consistent with our interviews with and visitations to like towns' community facilities. So they're right on.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Town administrator search, Mrs. Hunter?
So we had a meeting last week. It was a very good meeting. As a matter of fact, my homework is due tomorrow, so I had better get it done.
I want to see it before it goes in, I want to
Right,
check it.
right. So my homework is due tomorrow. And it was a good meeting. It was a training session. We talked about the process. We talked about how to go about interviewing candidates. We talked about whether or not, and this is something that I'd like your feedback on, whether or not we as a board would like to bring the finalists back and do something similar to what the schools do, is have a candidate day where you have them spend the day at the townhouse.
within the office.
And, right, and, you know, citizens can meet them. And the schools were gonna give us an outline of their process on how they do it. Mary from the Collins Center said that we should be really cautious about if we ask for suggestions, to make sure that citizens knew just because they made a suggestion, it's not something we could necessarily act upon. You know, we have to make a decision in the best interest of the town.
Right.
But she said many towns do have this candidate day or finalists. You might bring back the final two.
Yeah.
So it's something that we should think about as a board. The other thing that she stressed was that the job of the screening committee is just that, to screen and to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen for what they believe are the top 3 to 5 candidates. It's not their responsibility necessarily to pick the candidate and make a recommendation. So our homework was to look at the profile that we put together and each of us to submit to the Collins Center 5 questions that we thought should be asked. And then she would pull everything together and come up with 10 questions that the committee would ask during the interview process. But she had already received 12 resumes.
Oh, that's cool. So in the past, when I was involved with search at the schools, I mean, I thought that candidates day was a good thing to do. You know, meeting people get different impressions. It really does another source of sort of soft feedback. So, you know, sitting here right now, I thought, well, I would certainly say that probably worthwhile to seriously consider.
So as a candidate, Carl, is that something you've experienced?
I did, yes.
Okay.
But I think the advice that was given, that at the end of the day, it's really the board's,
Right.
who the board feels comfortable with, is an important to remember. But, yeah, I went through that my last position.
How many people did you meet with throughout the day?
Probably 20, maybe a little bit more than that. because they wanted me to meet with certain departments.
Right, and
As
that's
well
what
as
she
a
was
public-
suggesting, right.
Yeah, it was a
There was a public forum, and then there was certain departments. That-
That's great.
Would you
Yeah,
recommend
she
doing
did
a
say we do
candidate?
like that.
Is that something?
You know, really, a little bit, it depends sort of, I'll call the culture of Dover. If you think that's something that's important to either the community or probably more on point, your other boards and committees,
Right.
to give them the opportunity, then I would say you should, yeah, do it.
And that's what I thought, because when we embarked upon this process, we said it was going to be inclusive.
Yes, and yeah, and we meant it.
And we have our first meeting scheduled for April 12th, so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With regard to free cash, I really don't think there's anything that we could add that we haven't covered this evening already, and certainly that we didn't cover on Monday night. We'll make sure the subtlety of our last discussion is that we're on the same page with warrant, and so that regardless of what numbers warrant comes up with, what number we come up with, that we both, from an accounting standpoint, we're in the same columns. There's no motion, there's nothing, there's no need to make a motion on any of the follow-up items. Town administrator update. Mr. Wright?
Mr. Chairman, a few items for the board this evening. First, just to give you another update on our work for the new towns, on the new town website. Earlier this week, we had a conference call with the company who we're working with on the website. With all the changes we were suggesting, they said they were less than 10 hours of work. What we were asking them to do, they said they could turn around pretty quickly. So we authorized them to do that work, and so that has started. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple of fairly serious issues with the town's network. One is somehow we picked up some type of span or other malware. We think it started over at the Carroll Community Center and something that Recreation may have had on their website, and it shut down their network for a while. Our consulting firm, Retrofit, couldn't figure it out, couldn't fix it. And Diana, our IT person, finally found the problem and was able to get it fixed. But it was, for a day, they were almost completely offline, and then even it affected this building for a short period of time. But we think that's fixed. Because of all what was going on, our web address, or our IP address, was blacklisted. So I don't know if you've ever had this. I've had it happen a number of times where it appears somebody infects your IP address and it makes it look like you've done something, and so the internet providers basically shut you down, thinking that you're some type of malware, person spreading malware. So we were blacklisted, so again, Diana had to spend some time with the major companies that oversee this
Right.
to get us off the list.
Get you whitelisted.
To get to, yes, back on.
What have you guys been up to
So-
in that office back there?
Right.
It's still not over with. I'm still getting, I know in my own email, probably a half a dozen to 10 emails a day from whatever has infected our network. And it's notifying other companies who thinks we're sending out these messages, and they're saying, take us off your list, and it has nothing to do with us. So the network's up, it's running, but we're still trying to clean up the problem.
Is the performance back? Network performance? Or is it still slow? You were saying?
Well, it's hard for me to tell because it's never been that fast, in my judgment, but it hasn't changed, it hasn't gotten worse.
Okay.
Mona?
Third on the list, you heard a little bit from Ms. Hunter about the Green Communities application and trying to get the HVAC system for the protective agencies building in that application. That application is due tomorrow. We will include a request for re-insulating 3 of our town buildings and for LED streetlights, conversion, our streetlights to LEDs. So at a minimum, that will go into the application tomorrow, and if we get the information for the HVAC, that will go as well.
And it's about, I'm going from memory, I think the total cost is about $88,000 that they're requesting? Right.
So just an oddball question. When you do the relights, do they shield the light to prevent light pollution going up? Is it directly downward? You know?
So almost all of the equipment today that gets installed is fully shielded, so it only shines down.
I don't think we need to anymore.
Yes, that's pretty much the standard today.
And just behind the tires?
And then, the last time I had the list at your open hearing, the open hearing on Monday, on the discussion about the OPEB trust, the question was asked about, for our existing OPEB account for the town's OPEB, how we do the investing.
Right.
And we've retained the Mellon, I think they're now called Bank of New York Mellon. They were retained a number of years ago that advise us on investing our OPEB account.
So I would imagine we would do the same thing for the stabilization account.
Well, it's different than you could, yes, you could. You don't, it really depends on how quickly you expect to draw it down, but you could draw it down in terms of sending it over to the
Right.
regional school, but they could invest that as well.
Well, we could
There's a little bit,
definitely-
the laws are a little bit different in terms of how you can invest stabilization funds versus OPEB, but as long as they did the investment within the state laws for stabilization funds, they could do that.
Maybe this is part of a bigger conversation. Maybe you, Jerry, and I could just talk about the options that we have available to us. That would be great.
Particularly as that stabilization fund gets larger, I
Right.
think then the investment discussion becomes much more important.
Right.
Yeah, more impactful. And then as,
So we're not investing in Bitcoin?
how often do we meet with BNYL? Have we had, probably,
Probably quarterly.
just Jerry?
I don't know.
Mr. Lundy, anything else?
That's all, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for Monday night, for all your help and guidance and all of the hard work behind the scenes with regards to
All the prep work.
all the prep work. There was a lot of prep work. And all the editing that Mr. Springer did to the hours and hours of work that Mrs. Hunter and I did to create everything that the grumpy editor edited. Some of us, for those of you watching at home, are really, really gifted with creating. Others are really gifted with editing. And as long as you have no pride of ownership in creativity, then editors do a fabulous job. And everything comes out really well.
3 kids going through the DS school system required one heck of a lot of editing, let me tell you.
My wife is a very good editor for those 3 kids going through the DS system. So thank you both for all of your edits. Not that I needed any edits.
Well, the more you look at things, the more edits you can make. It just never fails, right?
So thank you. Nothing else, sir? You good? The agenda for licenses, and which actually is considered agenda.
Let me see.
Yeah, that's just a beautiful thing. Thank you. So, to approve the licenses, and I know this is going to break your heart.
I was so looking forward to
So
having
the
you
consent
read them.
agenda, and then again, for those of you who are watching us at home for the first time or haven't seen, what we have elected to do is we consolidated the agenda parts that we vote on to limit the number of pages that we are put in front of us at the end of the meeting that we have to sign to a consent agenda item. So the standing items, the motions for special liquor licenses and the one-day events all are combined at the end. And we move simply the dates. So we move to approve the consent agenda items as presented that include special liquor licenses for April 2nd, 9th, 25th, May 3rd, 4th, 18th, 19th, 21st, 22nd, June 8th, August 17th. So many of these are weddings, events, graduation parties, celebrations at the Connor Center, Powesett Farms, at, where else? A lot of weddings coming up. A lot of weddings coming up. So congratulations to all the brides, and we still haven't been invited to the weddings. Would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Mrs. Johnson, anything to add this evening? No. Thank you so much for your attendance. We have the council on aging. Anything else you would like to add? I'm sure there are at least a half a dozen games that have been completed, and to all of our friends who are not watching us live because they're watching basketball games, I
John,
hope your team is
you
successful.
don't have to go till 7:50. You could move to adjourn the meeting.
To adjourn.
It's like, do this,
Yes. We're 10 minutes ahead of time, so I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded, all in favor, so adjourned. Rick, thank you very much.